It might be a bit surprising to learn that Jeopardy didn't start with Alex Trebek, as Art Fleming was the original host of the show. And not only that, but he got his start on Jeopardy all the way back in the year 1964, when it first premiered as a quiz show on NBC. This has led to some really interesting historical tidbits that often go forgotten today, such as the fact that John McCain was actually a contestant on Jeopardy in 1965, well before ever becoming a United States Senator, and he actually managed to become a one-day champion while competing on the show. But today, I'm here to talk about the contestants who have gone above and beyond, as everyone in this video has managed to win the coveted Tournament of Champions, which requires you to win 5 regular season games in a row just to even qualify. And believe it or not, the Tournament of Champions is as old as Jeopardy itself, with the first one occurring in 1964. At the time, though, this wasn't going to be a concept that was unique to Jeopardy, as NBC would organize a tournament for every game show that they were hosting at the time. But the difference is, Jeopardy outlasted them all, as did its Tournament of Champions as well. Now, as you can probably imagine, there isn't really much footage or even images available from this early era, so I'll try to do my best in terms of the visual references during this section. In fact, most of the information we have comes from microfilm of the NBC Master Book Broadlogs, which have been archived at the Library of Congress Motion Picture and Television Reading Room. And with them, it was discovered that the very first Tournament of Champions winner was a woman named Terry Thompson from Plainsfield, New Jersey, who had also accumulated $5,080 during her 5-day run in the regular season, which might not sound like much compared to today, but this was 1964 after all, and Jeopardy questions used to only pay 5% of what they do today. It was interesting to learn that you used to also keep however much money you made during the Tournament of Champions as well, with Thompson winning her semifinals round with $1,000, before winning the 2-day finals with a cumulative score of $1,510 across them. In addition to those earnings, she would also receive an additional $1,000 for having won the tournament, meaning she took home a total of $3,510 while winning the first ever Tournament of Champions. Before I continue, I just want to give a huge shout out to Robert K.S. for posting the information from each of the Art Fleming era Tournament of Champion matches, which was originally only available on the archived microfilm, and of course I'll link that in the description below. But we know that in 1965, the tournament would be won by a woman named Babs McClellan from Auburn, New York, who managed to win $5,250 during her 5-day streak in the regular season. And during the tournament, she would win her first round with $1,175, before also winning the 2-game finals with a cumulative score of $1,795 in the final 2 matches, giving her a total of $3,970 in tournament winnings. Beyond that, she would be just one of 2 contestants from the Art Fleming era to end up being invited to the seniors tournament later on, and I promise that the other will be coming up in this video. But as far as McClellan's performance goes, she would make it to the semifinals of the 1991 seniors tournament. Now, the 1966 TOC would end up including one of the strongest players from the Art Fleming era of Jeopardy, Burns Cameron, who had won a record total for the time, which was $7,070 in his 5 regular season games. And if you really think about it, clues were only worth 5% of what they are now, so imagine the kind of money he could have won on Jeopardy today. Although I do want to pay my respects, because I did find out that Cameron passed away in 2023, and apparently had been an avid part of the online Jeopardy community as well. And in the 1966 TOC, he was able to earn the win, taking home another $4,040. But unlike our last 2 winners, Cameron was actually invited back to Jeopardy in 1972, where he got to compete in a match for charity against 2 other contestants who had since surpassed his 5-day total. And in that, he took home 2nd place. But believe it or not, Cameron's involvement on the show still wouldn't end here, because in 1990 there would be a summer event known as Super Jeopardy, which had a total of 36 contestants, 35 of them being from the Alex Trebek era, and just 1 who was from the Art Fleming one. That, of course, was Burns Cameron. You can see they had an interesting format here in the quarterfinals, where 4 contestants would compete instead of 3, and I think that Super Jeopardy could make for its very own video. But in his match, Cameron would just barely lose out on getting 1st place, showing that he could still compete with the best of them nearly 25 years after his initial run on the show. When it comes to the 1967 TOC, however, there is much less information available about our winner, or who even won for that matter. We know that in the finals there was Eleanor Ensley, Harry Murtha, and Anne Freed, but in terms of who prevailed amongst them, things are pretty murky. It is actually confirmed in Eleanor Ensley's obituary that she was a runner-up in the tournament, so rest in peace to her, of course. But apparently, Robert K.S., the same person who I thanked for posting all this information, actually received a private message that contained a picture of the bottom portion of the 1967 Tournament of Champions trophy, which had said, "Jeopardy! 4th Annual Tournament of Champions, October 20th, 1967. Grand Champion, Anne Freed. Although we certainly don't have to worry about a lack of information, nor controversy, when it comes to our 1968 TOC winner, as it would end up being won by a man named Red Gibson, who's probably better known by the name Hutton Gibson. But if that still doesn't ring any bells, he's actually Mel Gibson's father. And while I certainly won't be getting into his controversial statements here, I will tell you that Gibson faced off against John Miller and Alan Shepard. And apparently it shouldn't be a surprise that he took the win over them, because according to this fact from IMDb, he graduated high school at just 15 years old and was academically ranked 3rd. Beyond that, Gibson would also make several more appearances on other game shows and be successful there as well, a few of which we actually have clips from.
Hutton, $10,200, the highest amount that's ever been won on the Big Nine.
It's always nice to find out one of these champions was on something more recent, just like in the case of Burns Cameron, so I have some actual footage to show you guys. And man, these early Tournament of Champion winners never cease to amaze me, because in 1969, we had 2 significant people make it to the finals. But it's also important to mention that this was the year where they first expanded the tournament from 9 entries to 18, with it also now being a 10-day event that would have quarterfinal rounds before the semifinals and finals, which was all that it had prior to this point. They also added a 10-day trip to Hawaii for 2 as one of the prizes, along with $1,000, and the fact that all contestants still kept whatever they earned in the tournament. But as far as the finalists are concerned, we have Elliot Stier, who didn't win the TOC this year, but during his 5-day run in regular season play, he had won $8,230, which was a new record. And beyond that, he was actually invited back to the show all the way in 1995 for the seniors tournament, where he would ultimately place 2nd. And Stier wouldn't be the only one who got to meet both Art Fleming and Alex Trebek, as the 1969 TOC champion, Jay Wolpert, would actually go on to produce a game show for CBS that was known as Double Dare. And do you want to guess who hosted it? Yep, an original Jeopardy Tournament of Champions winner got to produce a show that Alex Trebek would host before ever getting the gig on Jeopardy himself. Now, for some reason, the tournament in 1970 got super weird. I figured that the previous year would have set the standard, but instead, they actually went back to having just 9 participants, and beyond that, there isn't very much information available from the master book for this one in general. But apparently they were experimenting with some kind of 2-day finals that would have different contestants in each game, and there may have only been 2 contestants in one of them. The whole thing sounds strange to me, but we do know that there was a tie between Dolores Henderson and Gene Cheatham, so they actually played a tiebreaker match that used points instead of dollars against the 3rd contestant named Russ Poilo, as he was the 3rd highest scoring participant of the tournament. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is the very first time that they used points for a Jeopardy match, which is the system they would go on to adopt for many of the tournaments today.
You wrote down there, who is the GO's greatest host of syndicated TV, and you started to write Pat Sajak, is that right?
What?
I wish you had risked more points.
Although I've definitely seen a $sign in recent TOCs again. But additionally, they also had to reduce the finals from 2 days to 1 because of that extra game, which led to them doubling the money values for each question as well. Another first for Jeopardy! Gene Cheatham was the one who made it to the finals, and according to Maxine Fabe, who published the book TV Game Shows in 1979, she also won the whole thing. And going forward, the master books continue to lack a lot of the information they had included for earlier years, so it's a little tougher to determine what exactly happened. In fact, take a look at the game show fandom page for 1971. It's literally just 2 tables filled with question marks. But at least we do know that a man named Rock Johnson won this year. But of course, if you try looking him up, you're just going to find Dwayne The Rock Johnson instead. However, thanks to this recent discovery made by Seaborgium, we now have a decent bit of information about Johnson, such as the fact that he was 30 years old when he first appeared on Jeopardy, which was in June of 1971, and that he won over $5,000 across his 5 games. We also know that he was from Alabama, but currently was working as the Assistant Director of Student Activities for Mercer University in Georgia. For some reason, this newspaper even went so far as to give the literal street address of him, his wife, and his daughter, which I can never even begin to imagine in today's day and age. But it really is just so cool having been able to find this post that was only made at the beginning of 2025, as it gave me a ton of insight into Rock Johnson that I never would have known otherwise. And going back to the master book for the 1972 TOC, we continue to have pretty limited information, although it is a little better than the logs for 1971 had been. So we do know a few things about these contestants, such as the fact that Susan Smith, who was one of this year's finalists, had a doctorate degree and was an English professor, with a total winnings of $4,970 during her 5 regular season games. And we also know that Anne Marie Sutton would end up winning the tournament this year, who was a journalist from New York. In 1973, it would be Paula Ogren who took home victory, and according to her obituary, 2 years after after that, she actually ran for city council and came in a strong second place before, at the age of 59, entering law school, becoming an LA County public defender for juveniles 4 years later. And finally, we have 1974, which is a little bit strange because Maxine Fabe listed Denny Golden as the champion for that year. However, Peter Staley, who we know did make it to the finals, had it listed in his obituary that he was the champion that year. And he only passed away a little over a year ago as well, so rest in peace to him and everyone else mentioned in this video that has passed as well. But also, I don't really want to speculate too much without having more information myself, but I just wanted to include anything relevant that I could find. And that is it for the first part of this video, but if you guys end up enjoying it, I'll definitely be making a part 2 where I cover the first half of Alex Trebek's career, probably stopping on the last year where the show still had a 5-day limit for champions. But until next time, this has been another Angry Snail production.